zoom in a little bit as I do. Always apologize whenever I have to do this in the beginning. Sorry about that. Okay, here we go. Our starts and sits. Starting with the quarterback position as we always do. So, anyone you guys want to talk about, you have questions, please pop them into the comments. Anyone in the top five, I don't think we really have to discuss. I mean, they are all pretty easy starts. If you're doing daily, Joe Burrow is who I like if you can pay up for him. I think he's the easy smash start for daily fantasy. Patrick Mahomes, I talked about this in our start sit video. I think this is the game he actually does well because Tampa Bay has a terrible defense for quarterbacks just to pass all over, and he has another week to get right with his wide receiving core that in the essence is a brand new wide receiving core, which is crazy. Next, Kirk Cousins, Dallas Cowboys. We all know by now the Cowboys are trash. Coming into the season, people thought Dallas would be good. Their defense had been good, but they changed defensive coordinators, and it really is showing. Sam Darnold against Indy, another one that's pretty easy. I think this is the first one you have to start and think about. Kyler Murray against Chicago. Chicago's defense has been pretty good all season, but Kyler has weapons, and don't forget he will run the ball a little bit. Dak Prescott, another one that I talked about in my start and sit videos for the week. Dak's been garbage, but against Atlanta, which is in the bottom five against quarterbacks, he should be able to connect with CD, Ferguson, and with Zeke not there, Rico should be able to do a little bit of running. I want to jump down. Let's see here. First person I would really consider moving around, Jordan Love. As of right before I jumped on, he is still supposed to start. If not, I definitely see him in this area, but I like Jordan Love, honestly, right here near the top 10 and not 15, simply for the fact that Jordan Love has shown he can throw the ball and he knows how to score touchdowns. This has actually been a sit for me, Baker Mayfield. He's been player number two overall. I don't know if you guys have been keeping up with that kind of ranking. He's been player number two, which is just absolutely nuts. But Kansas City Chiefs calling card this season is their defense, and for that reason, I am sitting Baker. Tua, definitely a guy that you want to start, especially in Superflex. I have no problems with this. Jameis against a tough Chargers defense. Harbaugh has come in there and made the defense in his image as he normally does really tough. So Jameis for me this week is a sit unless you just have to or it's Superflex. Jared Goff to see him all the way down here. If you guys don't follow too much, the reason for that is the Packers defense is legit. It's overall a top five defense, and their biggest strength is their secondary. It's looking like Jair and everyone's going to play, so it'll be really interesting to see how Goff does against a tough defense. If you have to play him, I would play him definitely over like Baker Mayfield. I guess I honestly would slot Goff more into this, let's call it 12 to 15 range. But if you can sit him, definitely do that. Moving on, Rodgers played. We saw how that went. Joe Flacco. He is starting, which we'll get into. That raises everyone's profile in Indy, which is crazy because a couple years ago it looked like Joe Flacco was going to be out of the league or just hanging on to collect a few million here or there as a backup. But the last two seasons, he's shown he can come into a team, and as long as they have pieces, he can be a viable quarterback. He led the Browns to the playoffs, and people thought they might make a little noise. This is someone people have been sleeping on, Justin Herbert. Okay, I get it. He started off slow. Last year, he didn't have the best, but he's getting better and more comfortable. Lad McConkey is a legitimate threat, so I like Herbert. I would actually start him over guys like Jameis, over Derek Carr. Again, I probably have him around here, almost like flip flopping him with Baker. Let's see here. Moving on. Lawrence against Philly. That's someone else. Lawrence, the last 5 weeks, has been pretty good. A lot of people are sleeping on him. Again, if you have questions, pop them in. This is one we saw, how this turned out, the Jets and Stroud. I hope Stroud really starts to get it turned around because people drafted him in the first 5 rounds, and it's looking like it is an overpay just like it was for Herbert 2 years ago. The others down below here, I think it really is just dependent upon if you're injured, if you're in a super deep league, or if you are in a super flex. But most of these are sit. The one I will highlight is Rudolph, because he's been able to throw the ball, and New England's defense is so-so. And the other one I would like to just quickly touch on is Drake May. If Drake May is a go, he can run, and he's shown he actually is pretty viable, which is shocking. There's a lot of knocks on him. So of this quarterback class, it really is interesting. All the first rounders, except for Minnesota's, who's been hurt, really have shown that they were pretty good pickups this year. All right, moving on. Again, if you guys have questions, pop them in there. Let's go to the running back position. Saquon Barkley versus Jacksonville. That's a smash. There's no need to talk about that. Kyron Williams, again, let's get into Derrick Henry. Okay, this is going to be interesting. Of course, Henry is Henry, but Denver is a tough defense. I would never ever start Derrick Henry. I would never sit Derrick Henry, but I would expect him to do a little bit worse than he's projected. On this site, they're projecting 15.5. So if he comes around 12 against that tough defense, just know that that's better than most of your other players. But I could see him not hitting his mark or going off because of Denver's defense. Kamara is in a good spot, especially with Carr coming back and Carolina being terrible. For dynasty purposes or trade, I would look to flip Kamara personally, but for this week, he is not a bad play. Bijan should run and be crazy all over Dallas. I mean, the Cowboys right now, as I said last week, they are a get-right defense. If you have players that are struggling, definitely go ahead and start all of them. Joe Mixon, he did great. Kenneth Walker, he hurt a lot of people last week. It was his first real dud whenever he wasn't injured. So it's one of those things where I think you go back to him. The Rams defense is improved, but I think Kenneth Walker's a stud. Here's an interesting fact, jumping down to Devon Achane, if you did not know. In the weeks that Tua has been healthy, so it's only been 2.5 games, Achane has finished as the RB1. All right. So definitely start Achane. You spent the capital, but that's an interesting fact for you is that when he's been healthy with Tua, he's been RB1. Aaron Jones against Indy. I think you just always have to start Aaron Jones. He's literally that guy that just always seems to somehow hit his projections unless he gets injured. Same thing with Gibbs against the Packers. If I see a kind of weakness, it's the fact that Gibbs can kind of catch those passes that are dumped to him. And the Packers' weakness is that first 5 yards or so around the line of scrimmage. Cooks, definitely a start. Davis is someone that I like as well if you have to, but while Cooks is healthy, he is the man there. James Conner against Chicago. We talked about this with Caleb. Chicago has a really tough defense. If you have better options, then I would sit James Conner. Kind of doing what I always do. People that move about Conner when we first get into that position. I like Kareem Hunt above Conner. That's right there. Josh Jacobs, if he's healthy, I like him above there. I like Pollard, J.K. Dobbins. Honestly, I would have Conner right around here with the Tracy and Chuba. If you did not see the rookie, I am blanking for Carolina, but he is out again this week. So Chuba has the workload to himself. So definitely start Chuba against a terrible terrible Carolina Panthers. What else? Chase Brown, his partner is out this week, Moss. So he will have all the backfield to himself. So you can definitely start him against a terrible Las Vegas. David Montgomery, I think you have to start him, especially if you are banged up or in injuries. Someone down here that's kind of really low is Ramondre Stevenson. Last week, Ramondre was in on 70, I'm blanking. 82, there we go, Joshua. 82% of all the team's offense of snaps. So he's someone that I think is a little low. I would definitely have him over Nick Chubb. I would have him kind of here around the Chase Brown and David Montgomery mark myself because Ramondre has shown as long as he's getting value, he usually puts up numbers for you. Oh man, thoughts on the Cowboys and what they need to fix it? Great question, unknown. First of all, I live in Texas, but I'm a Packers fan. So right there, your head coach. You saw that he couldn't get over any of the humps for the Packers, and I just think that's where you start. You have to start with McCarthy. That really helps to fix a lot of it. I think this season, I really don't know. McCarthy is the biggest thing that holds you guys back. You paid all that money to Dak and CD, which Jerry just overpays, which again, Dak is overpaid. I mean, you're committing all of your money into a player who is around Jared Goff. Actually, not even Jared Goff. That's an insult to Jared Goff. Right now, he's shown he's closer to David. I mean, to Carr than he is to even Golf. So that's another big issue is Jerry overpaying, which he's done his entire time as the GM. I think the other main thing is you guys really have to look at your O line. I would have spent a little bit more money on it because you guys are just kind of patching together, and it's showing Dak needs a clean pocket, especially after that ankle injury. He doesn't have much run in him anymore. So that on the offense is one of the biggest issues. On the defense, I'm blanking on the cornerback that was hurt going into the season, but he was a guy, Bland Dion. Anyways, he is a fantastic cornerback. So in your just defense overall was scheme based on the defense coordinator that you lost. So I'd say start with getting rid of McCarthy and then start working on your O line are the two main things I would start looking at next year and what you can this year. All right, back to this. Any questions again, pop in there and we'll talk about it. Alexander Matson, he has that role to himself. Cincinnati's defense is very meh. So if you're needing to start a running back, I like him. Same idea with Dowdle. All right, Atlanta is a bottom 10 defense for fantasy, and Dowdle has it to himself. Zeke didn't even get on the plane, so I definitely like him. Let's get into a couple that are down here that if you're not paying attention, Rashard White against Kansas City. He's in a timeshare, and on top of that, Kansas City, their defense is legit. If they're going to win a Super Bowl this year, it's going to be with an average offense and a legit defense. Moster, it's getting up there in age. As I said earlier, it's A-Chain. And on top of that, the rookie out of Tennessee really has been flashing, and Moster is not having a good year. If you take away his goal line carries, he's probably not even startable. Bucky Irving, same idea with Rashard Watt. I personally like Bucky a little bit more if you have to start him, but he does have a little bit of a toe injury. Javonte Williams is just so matchup dependent, okay? Depending on who they're playing, game script, he's someone you definitely keep on your bench, but I just would probably try to choose spots where it's just smash starts. Eckler, I'm not starting. Tyler Algier with Dallas. If Dallas falls way behind, Atlanta will run the ball, which means Algier will get a few more carries. So if you're needing a flex or in daily, if you're wanting a cheap buy down, Algier is definitely an option. Anyone else down here? Ray Davis, I'll highlight as if you're in a super deep league, just because he's in like a 30-70 timeshare. And if he just gets a moderate bump, he's definitely flex viable. Anyone else? That's probably it. If you have any questions for running backs or other positions, pop them in. Moving on now, we're going to go to the wide receiver position. CD Lamb, as you saw last week, just he is a ball machine from the Cowboys, mainly because it is him, and then it goes to Ferguson, and then I mean, but main question is Devontae Adams to the Jets. Do you think there will be a big effect or possible playoff out? Man, Devontae Adams, he's getting the ball. That's the thing. Is he went there and definitely he is going to get fed over and over again by Rodgers. I don't think there's much hope for the Jets playoffs. I thought last week was kind of their make or break for any wiggle room when they lost last week. I think it made it where they have to be perfect the rest of the season, and that's just so hard to do. It's possible if they go on a run and they win out. I mean, that'll make it seem that they gel together and they can possibly make some playoff noise. But for me, Devontae Adams is someone you can definitely start as like a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, or flex, just because of the volume. But overall, the Jets, I don't think I would put their playoff hopes in like that 10 to 15 range at most. All right, Justin Jefferson, arrow down. You never have the arrow down on Justin. I get it. They moved him from 1 to 2, but he's always a smash start. Same thing with AJ Brown, all these guys. Let's get into the first kind of questionable one. I mean, Cup, Puka. It's interesting that they have them flipped around. If you watch the game, you saw that Puka is clearly the number one and Cup is the number two. Not a bad thing, but I do think it's Puka then Cup. Olave, with Carr coming back and them being decimated on offense, and especially wide receivers, Olave is an easy start because he's going to get like 20 targets. Again, Garrett Wilson, when we're talking about Adams, strangely enough, Garrett Wilson is the number one, and he's younger and still shows his explosiveness. Or Adams, he has that vet savviness with his route running, but I think Adams is now the clear number two. Terry McLaurin, very, very easy start against the Giants. DJ Moore, I'm going to tell you kind of my opinions on that, which is the fact that the Bears seem to not know who they want to pass to, which is great whenever you're playing them, keeps you confused, but they truly do not have a number one. And until Caleb kind of establishes a little bit of a pecking order, I would move him down. But if you have to start him, I completely understand. Devontae Smith, with Goddard out, I definitely would be starting Devontae Smith. It's shown that when Goddard's out, he definitely gets more targets and has better games. Jaden Reed, as I have said in the past, he's the only Packer catch option for the wide receivers that I feel comfortably starting. The next then would be Kraft. So, just going through it, if you're wondering, I go Reed, Kraft, then Dubs. Then after that, it really is just a mix. Bo Mixon, Wicks, just who's healthy, who's hot. It really is very frustrating if you have those players. Okay, next, moving on, Darnell Mooney against Dallas. Definitely an easy start. I would have Mooney closer to the Terry McLaurin range, honestly. All right, let's get into this next little group. Marvin Harrison, I think he should have an okay game, but Wilson has helped draw coverage. Same thing with McBride. So we'll see how Chicago stands up to a pretty decent offense. Tank Dell, as we saw, had a monster game. Nico should be coming back next week, and I think that only limits Dell a little bit, but I would be starting him from here on out with it being the Nico and Dell show. Josh Downs, shocked to see him this low. I gotta kind of move back up again. I would have Downs over all these guys. I would have him right there with Terry McLaurin. I don't know why anyone would start them, especially with Flacco, because Downs is a smash start for me. Zay Flowers with Deontay Johnson in there. It's his first week, and I think I read that he'll only get like 11 to 20 snaps, so I can see Zay still being startable, but I would move him down a little bit. Calvin Ridley. It's going to be interesting to see how Rudolph and him continue. If he has another good week, I would start moving him up. Brian Thomas Jr., as long as he's playing, I'm starting him. The guy has been a touchdown machine and is fantastic. Again, guys, if you have questions, pop them in there. This one, Worthy. I've been trying to tell people over and over. Again, they always have him ranked around here. I don't like it. Worthy is a little bit better version of MVS. All right, his hands are not that great. If he was, they would not have had to bring in Juju. They would not have had to trade for Hopkins. All right, Xavier Worthy, everyone thought he was going to be the next Tyreek Hill, except they forgot you have to catch the ball. He's a little bit better than MVS and can do some of those gadget plays, but overall, I would be starting him. Oh man, probably down here in that Lockett, Jerry Judy kind of inconsistent range. Not here where it's with definite starts. Again, with Tua Waddle should continue to get better. Lad McConkey, the guy everyone is sleeping on. This is part of the reason why I said Herbert's going to keep getting better because McConkey's getting better and they're getting in sync. And I expect him for the rest of the season to be a top 20 wide receiver. Khalil Shakir, surprisingly, has been very relevant even with Cooper. The problem is, as you see down here, you have Coleman, you have Cooper. Luckily, Cooper's out this week, so I'm okay moving those up. But when healthy, Shakir, Coleman, Cooper, Kincaid, it's one of those pick your poisons. But for this week with Cooper out, I definitely like Shakir. Jacoby Myers is the number one, and it is shown that Minshew knows how to throw the ball. So I think it's one of those where volume rules type of thing. Sutton, he's just so volatile. Honestly, guys, I can't in good conscience recommend starting him unless you just absolutely have to. I'm putting Pittman above there. I have Pittman closer to 20, honestly, because again, it's Flacco. Cedric Tillman, to me, if he does well again this week, that's 3 straight weeks, and it'll show that Jameis and him just are on the same page. I've talked about it. Jameis and him would have been practicing with the second string, so it shows why they have that connection. D Hop, I'm not starting. I want to see what he has first, but against Tampa Bay, who is a terrible defense, if you need to, I could start him at wide receiver 3 or flex. Getting down into these, let me see if there's anyone that I really love to recommend to you guys. Out of this group, Jerry Judy against the Chargers, it's hard to start. I think Addison is a pretty easy start if you needed to. Let's see anyone else. Wandale Robinson against Washington. He's someone he still just gets tons of value. Him or Slayton, I could definitely see starting. Uh, yeah, there we go, Slayton. So that gets us through the mid 50s. If you have any questions, again, pop them in. All right, on to the tight end position. Travis Kelsey got him back up there at number one. I get it. He did okay last week, but I would not have him as a number one against Tampa Bay. I'm definitely starting him, but that is for this week. Overall, just keep in mind Travis Kelsey, I consider him a lot closer to Mark Andrews this year, who has been very up and down. But for this week, that's good. Brock Bowers, the guy who overall supplanted Kelsey as the number one tight end, fantastic. Trey McBride, I have no problems. Let's see here. Kyle Pitts, again, my apology tour. I am sorry you are having a good season based on volume. Here we go. Cade Otton. With all the injuries and everything, Otton is the number one receiving option, which definitely makes him playable, especially at the tight end position. However, just remember, KC's strength is their defense this season. So, with that said, I would start him, but understand that he might not quite hit a ceiling, especially what he gave you last week. Jake Ferguson against Atlanta, that's an easy start. Ingram against Philly. With most of his secondary options, Kirk is banged up. Christian Kirk, I have no problem starting Ingram. Sam Laporta, it'll be interesting if he, keeps the ball rolling that he started about 2 weeks ago. Because as I said, Green Bay's strength is their secondary. Kincaid against Miami, I have no problem starting, especially with Cooper out. He should be able to at least support his volume. Let's see here. Mark Andrews, someone asked me this today. I have no problem starting Mark Andrews against a tough Denver team. Again, the players above him, I would start above him, but except for Taysom Hill. I said this last week. This is my warning with Taysom Hill. You never, ever, ever know. Games they say is a start. You just don't know. So because of that, I don't ever pick up or own Taysom Hill. Tucker Kraft, I have him, right there. Eckler, Chase Brown, definitely Chase Brown. Jacob, Moss isn't playing this week, and Eckler, I get it. Brian Robinson is out, but he is older and just hasn't quite shown as much explosiveness. But of the two, I'm going with Brown. Brown has been explosive, and I think that should be a pretty easy start. Let's see here. Dalton Schultz, he got the volume as projected, but did not have a good game. Zach Ertz, this is a guy that I have been telling people when you are struggling, you have no tight ends. He seems to always be out there on the waiver wire, and you can add him, and he will give you at least 5 points. So I think he should be everyone's safety net. If you just need someone, go to Zach Ertz. Hawkinson, it's his first week back. I'm not starting him just because I want to see how he fits with Sam Darnold and how he fits in that pecking order because they have a lot of decent pass catching options, honestly. So let's see how that shakes out before we start him. Moving on, Hunter Henry, he's shown he's the number one target right there. Definitely like it. Cole Kmet, as I said, with the Chicago Bears. They're just all over the place. Mike Gesicki. T. Higgins is out, if you guys did not know that. So hurry up and change him if you had him, but that makes Gesicki definitely move up. Jonnu Smith, definitely someone that is a lower tight end too, but you can start. And for the rest of them, it's a little bit of throwing darts. The person I always like to highlight if you're really in a tough spot and you have no one else is Noah Gray. Noah Gray is basically a poor man's Isaiah Likely, and right there, Noah Gray, and when he gets a few targets, he makes the best of them. With it being against Tampa Bay, I could definitely see Noah Gray having 3 to 5 targets, which is all he needs to be viable as a low end tight end. Okay, let's see here. What else we have? Defenses, real quick before we get into the games. All right. Chiefs defense, obviously, against Tampa Bay without their weapons. New Orleans against Carolina. The Vikings against Indy. I think these are all easy starts. This is first one I would give a little bit of caution to. Washington Commanders against the Giants. The Giants have shown that they are a respectable offense. Not great, but, they can at least put up some points. The Chargers are fantastic. They're very undervalued. And again, Jameis likes to throw picks. Remember, he's the first quarterback to ever throw 30 touchdowns and 30 picks in a season. We have Philadelphia against the Jaguars. I said it earlier, the Jaguars are being slept on a little bit. So I would rather start, I'd rather start Tennessee. See who else. I know that's why it's kind of there, just matchup dependent. So that's the only other one lower on there that I would start. Moving on, Bears, I think they should be fine against Arizona. Lions, I actually would flop Green Bay and the Lions. I would have the Green Bay as kind of that last start option. Detroit, their defense hasn't shown that great, and the Packers have been feasting on getting interceptions and sacks. Okay, quickly, guys, let's get into last few things while we have 10 minutes. All right, give me just a second. Going to zoom out. I apologize when we do this part. So, okay, there we go. So I'll do the spread, a little bit of the over-under, and let's quickly go through this if we can, guys. So I do apologize again. So we have the Washington Commanders versus the Giants. The spread is -4. I actually have no problems doing the Commanders in the -4. The over-under's at 44. I think you should take the over. Cowboys Falcons. I'm taking the Falcons -3. I mean, the Cowboys just have not shown anything. I'm probably not touching the over/under because the Cowboys, they just seem like they find those garbage time points, even though people here like to say, oh, the games are so close. Last week was garbage time, guys. Bengals Raiders, it is the Bengals, but I'm not giving up 8 points. So if you could tease that down or just take the straight money line, but it is -400. Dolphins Bills. I think this is a must win for the Dolphins. And so with the easy bet, I'm taking the Dolphins in the 6 points, which is crazy, especially with Cooper out. So I'm taking Dolphins +6. Then the Broncos and Ravens. This I find to be a very interesting game, but they have the Broncos at +9. The Broncos have just been so disrespected. Their defense is pretty good. So I'm taking the Broncos and the +9. Chargers Browns, I know this is going to hurt people that work for this channel. We have 2 Browns people, but I'm taking the Chargers, and I'm probably even giving up the -2. On to the Saints and Panthers. This is a poo-poo game. They have the Saints at -7, but I'm not doing that. It feels like 3.5 if you want to tease the Saints down 3.5. If not, put the Saints in money line in a parlay. Let's see here. Patriots Titans. Man, I don't know if I'm touching any of this. Patriots +3.5, over under 38. This is the first time I've done this in the weeks we've done this. I almost go no bet. I don't like any of this stuff. Jaguars, Eagles. I am going to go with the Jaguars and the +7.5. I think the Jaguars should be able to keep up a little bit. Rams, Seahawks. I like the Rams. Definitely take the Rams and the -1.5. Finally, on to Lions Packers, the game of the week. Okay, so it's got Packers at +2.5. If it's 3.5, I would tease the Packers up to 3.5 and then take the Packers in the 3.5. Honestly, to me, it's more of a coin flip, but I'm not going to just do 2.5. I'd rather have 3.5 with the Packers. If not, then just take the Packers in the straight money line at +120. Bears and Cardinals tonight. I like the Cardinals. Cardinals -1.5. I definitely can see taking that all day long. All right, guys, we got a few more minutes on to the last game of the night. We have the Colts and the Vikings. I think it's going to be close, especially with Flacco, but I think the Vikings get right. So I'm taking the Vikings in the money line. I'm not going to give up 5.5, just being honest. Okay, let's go to tomorrow night's game. All right, tomorrow, Buccaneers and the Chiefs. We talked about it a little. I think the Chiefs win. It's -9.5. I'm not giving anyone 9.5. The money line is -450. I would try to build in some sort of parlay, but that is what I am doing with that, honestly. Lastly, if you guys just pop in for the live stream, we have a channel. We drop videos every week for start sits, waiver wire. We do tons of poker. We do Premier League soccer. We do fantasy basketball, fantasy baseball, obviously fantasy football, just about anything you guys want to talk about. We talk about bets. You can see how I placed a $10 parlay and made 34,000. And the games are about to start. Good luck, everyone, and always reach out to us if you have any questions. Talk to you guys in a few days.